Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we will dive into a very exciting topic, microlearning, a bite-sized solution to boost engagement and performance. This session is eligible for HRCI, SHRM, and ATD professional development credits. Let's meet today's speakers. Maria Nagy. Maria is a manager, product development at EBSCOlearning. With a focus on corporate learning, she leads a team dedicated to new product development and process optimization. A significant area of interest is exploring the intersection of human intelligence and artificial intelligence to enhance both her own productivity and workflows, and applying that learning to help drive transformation changes in the L&D industry. Next up, we have Michael Laddin. Michael is SVP and GM of EBSCOlearning, a division of advanced education, lifelong learning, and professional development. He is a skilled leader, executive, and entrepreneur experienced in growing businesses and product lines in the areas of software, information services, technology, publishing, and consumer products. Next, we have Rob Howie. Rob is head of growth at EBSCOlearning with a focus on corporate learning. He provides microlearning and skills building solutions to L&D, HR, and training professionals. An executive and entrepreneur, he has served as an executive educator, management consultant, and as a publisher with Harvard Business Publishing. A key area of interest is applying thought leadership insights to solve practical challenges people have in their daily work. Roberta Gogos. Roberta is a principal analyst and VP of agency at Brennan Hall Group. She has held CMO roles and specializes in brand, position, and developing marketing strategies that build market share and profitability for HCM vendors. Thank you to today's webinar sponsor, EBSCOlearning. EBSCOlearning is a leading provider of learning solutions designed to foster career development and a lifetime of learning. Through innovative products like ACCEL and partnerships with American Management Association and Harvard Business Publishing, EBSCOlearning offers learning paths, leadership development pathways, and custom content solutions that empower individuals and organizations to thrive in today's competitive landscape. With a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, EBSCOlearning creates ethical and forward-thinking resources to support learners at every single stage of their journey. Be sure to visit them at www.ebscolearning.com. We want to remind everyone that the annual Brennan Hall Group Excellence Conference is being held in Florida, January 28th through 30th, 2025. Registration is open now, and we can't wait to see you there. We also invite you, as always, to participate in our research surveys. We have 3 that are active now. Links will be available in your handout, or you can always visit brennanhall.com. We currently have our Excellence in Action program open for application. For more information, please check out excellenceawards.brennanhall.com. Our institute represents the culmination of 3 decades of excellence in HCM and includes evidence-based solutions for your most pressing challenges, professional development for your entire team, access to collective wisdom and global HCM leaders, networking with peers who share your commitment to excellence. We are excited to share that at the end of today's webinar, we will be selecting our 2 raffle winners. You could be a winner of 50% off the 2025 HCM Excellence Conference, or you could win a free Excellence in Action program submission. Stay tuned to see if you are the lucky winner. You must be present to win. Now, just a few quick things to note. If you have any questions, please use the questions panel on your control bar. We'll have time at the end for a Q&A. We're recording this workshop and we'll email you the link and a PDF of the slides within 24 hours. The chat box is open, so feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. Your input makes this more valuable for everyone. Roberta?
Thanks so much, Ivy, and welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to be joined by an excellent panel from EBSCOlearning today. We're diving into microlearning, which continues to transform how organizations approach learning, We're seeing a fundamental shift in workplace learning needs driven by remote work, generational changes, and the increasing pace of skill obsolescence. Microlearning isn't just another training trend. We're finding it's becoming very much the backbone of modern corporate learning. And today we're here to explore why. But before we dive in, let's get a sense of where everyone is in their microlearning journey. How familiar is your organization with microlearning? Let's give that a minute or so. I can't see the results. Hold on. There we go. Thank you for participating. How are we going with responses, Ivy?
Going good. I'm going to share them now.
Fantastic. Thank you. Excellent. So we have 42% actively using it, 19% in the process of implementing it, 17% considering, and another 23% not explored yet. So there's quite a high familiarity. These results align with what we're seeing in our research, with 2/3 of organizations planning to increase their microlearning investment in 2025. It's clear that many of you are already recognizing the value. What's particularly interesting is that organizations that start with microlearning often expand their implementation rapidly once they see initial results. So that's great. Thank you. So we jump in. So your responses provide a perfect segue into why microlearning has become so critical. Let's look at the current state of workplace learning and why traditional approaches are struggling to keep pace. So let's dig into something critical, the learning crisis. And I use the word crisis deliberately because what we're facing isn't just a training problem or a skills gap. It's a fundamental business crisis that threatens how organizations develop and maintain competitive advantage. Traditional approaches to learning were designed for a different era when skills stayed relevant for years, when work patterns were predictable, when going to training meant physically going somewhere. And today we're trying to solve tomorrow's challenges with yesterday's solutions. So it's like trying to stream Netflix on a VHS player. The technology works, but it's completely misaligned with how we consume content today. So we're looking here at traditional training can't keep up. What's really compelling about this situation, it's not just about the mechanics of delivery failing. When we look deeper at our research data, what we're seeing is that traditional approaches are failing at a much more fundamental level. They're built on assumptions that no longer hold true, that work happens in one place, that skills remain stable, that one-size-fits-all training can meet diverse needs. So we're seeing organizations struggle to maintain the agility they need to compete effectively. So the implications of this mismatch are pretty profound. When training doesn't align with how people actually work, we're not just wasting resources, we're actively undermining our ability to build the capabilities that organizations need to survive and thrive. Let's look at why it's failing us. Okay, so here are some key stats about traditional training challenges. These numbers tell a story that should concern every business leader. When half of our organizations can't measure if training works and only a quarter can link it to revenue growth, we're not just facing a learning problem, we're facing a business sustainability problem. This reflects that misalignment, that fundamental misalignment between how we're delivering training and how modern businesses operate. But what's particularly striking here is also the resource trap organizations find themselves in, and just look at the investment required: $250 per hour for content development, $14,000 for a typical in-person class, 57 hours to build that. Organizations are spending enormous resources on approaches that aren't delivering results, while simultaneously struggling to build skills fast enough to stay competitive. It's a perfect storm of high investment and low impact. What makes this even more critical is that these aren't just training metrics, they're early warning signs of organizational agility at risk. When companies can't build skills fast enough to keep pace with market demands, they're not just like falling behind in training, they're losing their ability to adapt and compete effectively. Mike, we were talking earlier today, and you had some good thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Roberta, and thanks everyone who's taking the time to join us today. Yeah, a couple of things to highlight. One of the things that we're seeing with our customers at a very basic level is that many employees at their companies aren't even aware of the range and breadth of learning resources that are available to them. So that's a real fundamental issue, and it's a real opportunity from a communication standpoint, for those involved in learning and development to bridge that gap. Another thing that I thought was where there's a significant gap, and which also represents an opportunity, is this stat where it says only 1 in 4 companies link training to revenue growth. According to a recent Gartner study, most CEOs say that their #1 strategic priority for 2025 is revenue growth. So most CEOs are saying that's their top strategic priority, yet only 1 in 4 companies are able to link the training that they're doing to that strategic priority. So that is a significant gap, but it also represents a real opportunity that folks involved in learning and development can address.
Indeed. So companies are basically going all in. Let's show them that the stat that we have from our data at through our Brandon Hall Group study, please, Ivy. So the next slide, please. So thank you. So this data point about future investment is revealing, aligned with what you were saying, Mike, and that 2/3 of organizations are planning to increase their microlearning investment in 2025. The thing is, this isn't just a number. It's actually what it tells us about how organizations are thinking about learning. That it's not just a tactical shift in training delivery, that we're seeing organizations making this investment because they've recognized something really basic, fundamental. The way people need to learn has changed irreversibly. It's not going back to what it was. It's about responding to a permanent shift in how work gets done. So the investment increase is happening across industries and company sizes, and we'll talk about how diverse that is a bit later in this presentation. And but we're even seeing traditional industries, regulated sectors, and established enterprises all moving in this direction because they recognize that conventional approaches simply can't keep up. So the pressure is on. Let's look at some numbers. So I have a moment to take a look at some of the data on this slide. So it's about fundamentally rethinking how learning happens when you can no longer rely on physical proximity, for example, for knowledge transfer. The speed of skill evolution adds another critical dimension. when only 35% of organizations can keep pace with market changes, we're not just looking at a skills gap, we're looking at a growing capability crisis. But here's what makes this truly challenging. It's happening just as we're seeing the most generationally diverse workforce in history, with Gen Z bringing fundamentally different expectations about how they want to learn and develop. And when you look at these different pressures, they aren't just additive, they're multiplicative. Each challenge amplifies the others, creating a situation where traditional approaches aren't just underperforming, they're actively hindering organizational agility. So for example, when an organization tries to deliver standardized training to a remote workforce with diverse generational preferences, they could end up with, for example, lengthy courses that take people away from work, or that don't match individual learning styles and become outdated very quickly. So teams end up losing productivity, engagement drops, the organization falls further behind in building critical capabilities, etc. So you can see how the three challenges of remote work, generational differences, rapid skill changes compound. Mike, I think you had some thoughts on that as well that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I think just highlighting how how fast skills can become outdated. I saw a piece of information also from Gartner recently that said 1 in 4 jobs worldwide are going to change over the next 5 years pretty dramatically, or in some cases not even exist, due to some of the big transformations that are taking place, things like AI and different industry transformations. So when you think about that, 1 in 4 jobs being dramatically different than they are today over the next 5 years, that's a real, again, significant change, and also a real opportunity for folks involved in learning and training to meet that need.
Thank you. Let's have a look at how microlearning transforms impact. So these are some metrics around timeline reduction, development costs, project completion. So the transformation that we are seeing through microlearning in our data is not incremental, it's quite dramatic. Cutting development costs by 60 to 80% while simultaneously reducing time to competency by 40 to 45%. Represents a big shift in how organizations can approach learning. These numbers matter because they address the exact pain points that we just discussed. When projects complete 25 to 30% faster and development costs drop by up to 80%, organizations can finally break free from the resource trap of traditional training. So it's not about doing things cheaper or faster. It's about really creating the agility organizations need, again, to keep pace with change, with the, 1 in 4 jobs that will change in the near term. So most importantly, these improvements compound over time. And as teams master skills faster and projects complete sooner, organizations build momentum in their ability to evolve. Mike and Rob.
I'd like to chime in here, Roberta, for a second. It's one of the things that we're seeing with our customers is that quite a number of them are using this as an opportunity, to effectively position their learning offerings, in particular microlearning, as a career benefit, right? Because microlearning focuses on learning in the flow of work, which is not extra time that individuals have to take It happens in the flow of work. And so we're seeing that increasingly being offered and positioned as a benefit to their employees. And also, we're seeing that the more you can have executive and leadership champions and sponsors of that type of learning, the more widespread the adoption is and more effective that it is.
Rob, did you say that? Do you want to chime in here? Shall we?
Well, I would just echo what Mike said. First of all, let me just thank you for inviting us today to this, and so good to have so many folks on the in the program. To echo what Mike said, you know, and what we've also said, younger people expect to learn in the job, and companies promote as part of their recruitment and their onboarding strategy the fact that they have, you know, these assets. You know, we can help you build the skills you need to succeed and get promoted. That's the message, right? And I would also say, as part of EBSCOlearning's customer success program, we encourage our customers to do just that. And many other companies would do well to promote what we consider to be a best practice, and many of them don't. As Mike said earlier, they're not even aware that they have these tools and assets. So a marketing push by L&D to really make this available and to communicate self-interest to the employee. The smarter you are, the more you learn, the more you help your own career, and of course, the more valuable you are to us as an employer. So I think this is an untapped opportunity that should be exploited.
Great point there, Rob. We've looked here at the impact organizations are achieving, but we'd really like to understand what matters to you all in the audience most. So let's do a couple of quick polls to get your perspective. Which aspect of microlearning interests you most? So we'll give you a minute or two to share your answers with us. Thanks for getting those answers in. Let's give it a little longer. Thank you. So we've got pretty even selecting just-in-time learning and skill development, with less so performance support and AI-driven personalization. That the just-in-time learning or performance, this aligns perfectly with what we're seeing in our research, that organizations are prioritizing learning that integrates directly in the workflow to, I think that was Rob's point or Mike's point earlier as well. And skill development, and the focus on skill development really mirrors what successful organizations are finding as well, that microlearning can significantly accelerate capability building. Let's ask one more question before we continue. What is your primary goal for implementing or improving microlearning? Let's give you a minute or two. How are we going with responses, Ivy?
Feeling good. I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds.
Thank you. All right. Let's see where we're at. So increasing employee engagement, number one there at 44%. This focus on engagement and the 27% on enhancing productivity as well shows a clear understanding of how learning directly impacts business performance. It's great. And then addressing changing skill needs at 27%. So this emphasis on skill development also reflects what we're seeing, that the urgency of organizations that organizations face in keeping pace with change, and reducing training costs down at 2%, not a big priority for you all yet. All right. So let's have a look at the business impact before we get into some practical implementation strategic stuff. So the business impact metrics that you see reveal something crucial about effective microlearning implementation. When 89% of employees actively use learning resources, it signals a shift from push to pull, push training to pull learning. This engagement translates directly into operational improvements, team mastering skills 45% faster, and projects completing 30% sooner. But the real story lies in how these metrics like cascade through an organization. New hire productivity, Rob spoke to onboarding and new hires earlier. Productivity improving by 69% means faster time to value from the business perspective. Process efficiency improving by 40% means better operational performance. Together, these numbers show that effective microlearning doesn't just transform learning, it transforms business performance as well. Let's make this real with some examples. And you see here on the next slide that, these cut across vastly different industries, yet they share a common thread. Each organization found ways to make learning immediate, practical, and directly tied to business incomes. From insurance to retail to nuclear power, we see a pattern that when organizations embed learning into the workflow and align it with specific business needs, the impact is substantial. Rob, would you tell us a little bit about these different stories? They span different industries. Could you elaborate on how they overcame their industry-specific challenges to achieve these results?
Sure, and I'd just like to echo your point. There's a lot of statistics and percentages out there, which, if you see enough of them, sometimes your eyes glaze over. So to really bring home that impact, we need to bring these to life with use cases. And here are three, as you suggest. The first is a Fortune 100 insurance company. To help employees build the skills they need to succeed, they built a smarter way to develop talent with a tiered learning strategy. So they provided a foundational content to individual contributors while reserving specialized training for managers and leadership-specific content for the executive team. So everybody gets what they need in bite-sized formats to achieve the development goals they have across the company, and consume that, as you've said a couple of times, Roberta, in the daily flow of their work, not on nights and weekends. The second is a major grocery chain that made content easily accessible to non-connected, as they call it, frontline workers, that is, those without desktops or laptops, on core skills that can be applied immediately on the job. In this case, they emphasize practical customer service and operational skills such as conflict resolution. These are consumable within a minute or two on their cell phone. And what it did is it led to learning what they call conversations between shifts with regional and store managers and customer-facing employees. And peer-to-peer sharing makes for faster skill development. So it's a double win. And the third use case is a professional association in the nuclear power industry. They use microlearning to develop their future leaders across more than, I think it's 20 US nuclear power plants. So their learning paths target specific competencies that are required for plant managers and chief nuclear officers. So by focusing on the critical skills, the critical business skills, the strategic skills that they need, not the technical skills, like communication and building trust, they achieve leadership development that's consistent with the industry's unique safety and risk demands. And I think all of these cases and others that we have at EBSCOlearning really are good examples of an L&D strategy that's very closely aligned with the business, which is a key message that we'd like to convey to our listeners today. If it's not aligned with the business, it's not aligned. And we'll say more about that perhaps in the Q&A. Thank you.
And like in terms of like common patterns, and I know we're talking about implementation, shortly, but were there common patterns that emerged in terms of implementation approach across these three case studies, Rob, despite the different industry contexts?
I would say there are probably several, but the one that comes to my mind, Roberta, is that it isn't a set it and forget it. This goes back to the point Mike made of employees not all being aware of what assets a company has. It's not a question of providing microlearning or any kind of learning. It needs to be marketed. It needs to be promoted. It needs to be brought to the employees so that he or she understands if they want to have a productive learning culture, they need to begin to, promote in a way that employees get it and use it. One of the industry's dirty, dark secrets is end user usage is not what it should be. In most companies, we've seen maybe numbers 50 to 70%, but in quite a few organizations, we've seen far less than it. So it's not enough to provide it. As I said, set it and forget it. It needs to be promoted. We need to celebrate success. We'll talk more about that later.
Great, thank you. Let's look a little bit at tech as an enabler. Everybody's interest is a lot of AI talk in the industry. So we wanted to talk about the integration of AI as well into microlearning, which isn't just about automation. It's transforming both the economics and effectiveness of learning. An 80% reduction in content development time combined with 35% more relevant content represents a step change in how organizations can approach learning delivery. This is a really compelling efficiency story, but the real transformation is in the learning effectiveness when AI converted content drives a 65% increase in knowledge scores. We're seeing technology solve the perennial challenge of learning personalization at scale, teams working 40% more efficiently and translation costs dropping by 80% are just the beginning of what's possible. But to make this again real, because we've looked at a lot of numbers today, EBSCOlearning leadership piloted an AI app called Mindstone in July. And Mike, we'd love to hear a little bit about that, please.
Sure, be happy to, Roberta. What we were seeing at EBSCOlearning was, AI is obviously on everyone's minds, and you could see the potential benefit here just on the slide. We realized at EBSCOlearning we had quite a range of knowledge about AI. So from very little knowledge to a decent amount and everything in between. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was to get a baseline with our core theme of a baseline of knowledge, level set on a certain set of knowledge. And over the summer, we brought in a company called Mindstone, which, based on our due diligence, had amongst the experts that we have in AI in our products, said this is the best training out there. We went through it. We had a core group go through it of about 25, 30 people. And the training was so beneficial to us and level set that we ended up doing a business partnership with Mindstone, and we now offer Mindstone AI skills training from EBSCOlearning. What we saw was that at a bare minimum, after 3 or 4 weeks of going through the training, at a minimum, folks on our team were saving 4 to 5 hours of time every week just in their jobs, and that's in within a month, right? And
Amazing.
so yeah, and as a result, we're putting right now about another 150 people through it, and I will tell you, it's the training itself is really focused on non-technical employees. So it's role-based training for non-technical employees, and it's based on an AI platform itself, where every person gets a slightly different and personalized experience because you input information about the role that you have. And so the exercises throughout the training are tailored to the role and the job you have currently at your organization. So it's really quite unique, and we're rolling it out across our business in addition to selling, right?
That's exciting.
The other point I'd like to make about AI, because I think there's a real opportunity here from a training, a learning and development standpoint, is that business leaders are expecting about a 23% increase across the board in productivity based on AI over the next 12 to 18 months. Yet when surveyed, about half employees have no idea how they're going to accomplish that goal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, it's both a gap, again, an opportunity for all of us involved in learning and development to help close that gap and help our organizations develop competitive advantage.
Exactly. Our research reflects the same. Shall we, with these super compelling metrics around AI's impact, I think it's time to hear from all of you. Let's take a quick poll to understand where your organizations are in terms of AI adoption for learning. How are we going, Ivy?
Yep, going good. I'll just give it a few more seconds and then I'll close it out.
Thank you. Here we go. Very interested. It's a top priority. This reflects exactly what we're seeing in our research. Organizations recognize that AI isn't just an enhancement, but a competitive necessity. And somewhat interested, of course, that makes sense too. Organizations are wisely looking to understand both the opportunities and challenges before diving in. And probably the neutral reflects a bit what you were talking about, Mike, that there's a bit of caution and probably there's an up curve that's ahead of us as well. So let's have a look at impact on L&D teams before we move into implementation. Just a few more numbers, I promise. There's a couple more slides with numbers from our research. All of this is in the research brief that EBSCOlearning, I believe, is sending out to people post-webinar, so you can have the research in hand. So the transformation of L&D teams represents a very critical pivot point. 6 in 10 teams currently lack the skills needed for AI and new learning tech, which Mike reflected earlier. Those who successfully adapt, however, are seeing profound benefits. The shift, and I keep talking about this stat on routine, like less time on routine content development, 60 to 80% less isn't just about efficiency, it's about how L&D teams operate. This evolution is literally redefining the L&D function itself. Teams are moving from content creation to strategic leadership, from administrative tasks to business impact, with processes running 40% more efficiently. L&D professionals can finally focus on what matters most, driving organizational capability and performance. Let's have a look at this slide. Thank you. The data is clear and compelling. What we've seen is that the challenges traditional learning faces, we've explored the impact of microlearning, and now let's look at what organizations are actually doing. The market isn't just accepting microlearning, it's embracing it as the future of corporate learning. What's significant here isn't just the adoption rates, it's the breadth and depth of implementation across industries and company sizes. Organizations are not experimenting anymore. They're actually going all in, and the results are validating this decision. So have a look quickly at the adoption numbers, which signal that this clear market direction. 62% favor microlearning over traditional learning. 75% already use dedicated platforms, and that significant number of 67% planning to increase investment in 2025. Why organizations are making this shift is the real story. The three critical elements that we're seeing in successful implementations tell us what matters most. Immediate practice of new skills, constant reinforcement, to Rob's point earlier about marketing, pushing, reminders, and employee ownership of learning as well, that self-development element. Organizations aren't just changing how they deliver training, they're rethinking how it integrates with work. I think let's move on to future direction before we dive into culture. So the investment patterns we're seeing tell this story about learning's future direction, that organizations aren't just increasing microlearning investment, they're building entire learning ecosystems around it. The focus on video capabilities, on AR, VR platforms, on enhanced coaching platforms shows how organizations are creating more immersive, engaging learning experiences. These tech investments reflect this deeper understanding that modern learning needs to be more accessible, more engaging, more effective, and organizations are betting on technologies that can deliver learning in those ways that match how people actually work and consume information today. Maria, I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was excited to share because you really sparked going back to the example that Rob shared in one of our use cases. We really see here with the large grocery store chain that we mentioned, this impact of the just-in-time learning and really learning when it's needed, right? So the L&D staff works business hours, right? They're working 9 to 5, but they want to be able to support the staff that Rob mentioned, the frontline workers who are working different shifts. And so it's been really interesting to see. They shared this example. Actually, we were talking about it last week with them on how EBSCOlearning's Excel is their go-to resource for 24/7 leadership and development support, so that their managers can go in if they need to go have a difficult conversation, whether it's customer service or it's a team member, they can go and watch a video. They can go and read an article depending on, their preference. and learn that knowledge and go and apply it right away. And we're really seeing, not just with them, but across the board, the most successful companies are building that learning culture really to drive engagement and retention. And going back to the poll answer earlier, interestingly enough, that was one of the top reasons that you all here today are interested in implementing microlearning. So we're really seeing that come together in that future direction. And I'll also just say, Roberta, if I can say, is like, here we all are taking the time, we're developing the tools, organizations are implementing them, and we're talking about microlearning, but we're not talking about, hey, go learn this on YouTube, right? We're talking about knowing that employees and team members in the organization are going to a trusted source that is providing relevant content that's flexible, whether it's articles or videos, and that overall you can trust that people who are consuming this knowledge are having impactful learning experiences, which is also really important when going through and making this a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is that's a really good segue actually into self-development. And I think this is my last lot of stats to share with you all potentially on the next slide. So let's look at building a learning culture now. Like, again, these are numbers, we'll make it real, but these performance metrics demonstrate why leading organizations are going all in. 89% of employees start to actively use available learning resources. New hires reach productivity 69% faster. And we're seeing impact that extends beyond traditional training metrics. The 73% increase in individual performance and 68% jump in employee engagement points to something very fundamental here. What these numbers really tell us is that when organizations get the learning culture right, when they trust employees to drive their own development, that impact then cascades through every aspect of performance. So it's not just about learning metrics anymore, it's about creating this organizational capability that drives a competitive advantage. Maria, I had a question for you on, given these impressive engagement performance metrics, what specific approaches have you seen work best for organizations building this kind of self-directed learning culture?
Yeah, it's really about building that continuous learning mindset. And our team has actually developed a list of strategies that people can implement. So it's across the organization, it's across managers who manage teams, and it's also across the individual. And so strategies like at the organization level, you can create a skill of the month challenge where maybe we're focusing on effective decision making this month, and everyone's going in and learning more about that. And the goal there is to then engage everyone. What did you learn? Let's reflect. You can do it through email, you could have it as a meeting, but having those challenges we found to be really effective. And another thing, I know on here, we create the product, but Excel, but we also consume it. We have book summaries where every month we say, what's the new book summary that we recommend? And it's almost like a book club, right? We can go and read it and talk about it together. Why is that something that's important to us this month? And that's been really valuable. And then also encouraging people to, at an individual level, maybe have like a personal growth journal. Excel has reflection questions in it to help you think, okay, I just read about how to build trust. Now, here are some thought-provoking questions for myself to really help internalize that information. And if anyone out there is interested, I sort of gave one example across the list, one example from each group across the list. But if anyone's interested in learning more and you want to have the list that we have a number of other things across individuals, managers in the organization. You can put your email in the chat and I'll send you an email of the list of strategies that we've developed to help implement and create a learning culture in your organization. And just to echo something that Mike said earlier, that's really important to this is finding a champion, an executive leadership sponsor to really help support this initiative.
Great. Do put your hand up in the chat if you'd like one. Awesome. There's a lot of emails coming about. Actually,
so excited.
If you put your hand up without putting your email in, we know who you are too, because it's tied to an email. So speaking of building a learning culture, so this is where we'd love to hear from you too. In your organizations, where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth? Let's give this poll a minute or so. Let's give it a few more seconds. Thanks, Ivy. Employee engagement is the big one. So that aligns with what successful organizations have found, that when employees drive their own learning, both participation and impact increase dramatically. Fantastic. And those emails are coming in fast and furious. Excellent. So the most powerful way to build a learning culture is to make learning inseparable from work itself. The numbers tell us why. Let's look at the next slide. This is the last metric slide. These metrics validate what many organizations are discovering, that learning is most powerful when it's embedded into actual work. The fact that 90% of real learning happens on the job isn't just an interesting stat, it's a roadmap for how we design learning experiences. So let's go on to implementation steps here. Let's shift gears and talk about practical implementation. Understanding the value of microlearning is one thing, successfully implementing is another. Our research of organizations have successfully made this transition, transition reveals a very clear pattern of what works, which we'll be going over quickly. What's particularly valuable about these implementation insights is that they come from organizations across different industry sizes and starting points, whether you're just beginning your microlearning journey or looking to expand existing programs. So let's have a look at those steps on slide 31. Success needs a plan. So successfully implementing microlearning is not about speed, it's about sustainability. Our research shows clear patterns among the organizations that get this right. The essential elements of a successful approach are: one, you need to build your foundation. That means understanding your current state, not just your technology, but your actual costs, capabilities, your content. Map your existing content against skills and business needs. Get business leaders involved early. There's a high chance of success for organizations that do this from the start, around 65%. Then you deploy strategically, start small with targeted pilots where you can clearly measure impact, build momentum through visible success stories, gather feedback systematically. This then becomes your roadmap for expansion. Track what matters, focus on metrics like time to competency, project completion rates, process efficiency improvements, and finally grow smart by sharing success stories and scaling what works. And always keep your eye on business results. Organizations that follow this systematic approach are far more likely to achieve and sustain the improvements we've been discussing today. So let's wrap up the key takeaways here. as we bring together everything we've discussed today, 4 themes emerge that define successful microlearning implementation. Each of these represents a fundamental shift in how organizations approach learning. Making learning strategic, making learning accessible, embedding into daily work, personalization moves us beyond one size fits all, and sustainability ensures we're building lasting capability. Let's just pop to the next slide, please. So everybody will have these notes as the slide deck will be sent over to you, but this basically breaks down the 4 themes into strategic components to make learning strategic, accessible, and make learning personal and sustainable. And these frameworks and insights from our research point to clear actions organizations can take, but let's make this even more practical. Rob, I'd like to turn it over to you now to share specific recommendations based on EBSCO's experience helping organizations implement successful microlearning programs.
Thank you, Roberta.
Hi, Ivy, can we pop over to the next slide, please? Thank you.
So by far and away, the first number 1 is to align L&D solutions with business objectives. We talked about that, and that may seem like a keen statement of the obvious, but many organizations don't have that. It's critical. If L&D isn't aligned, it may risk losing its funding, and it's fundamental to have alignment, to get an executive champion, which, as Maria said, is critical to building a learning culture. L&D has a unique opportunity to help retain employees through recognition and providing some clarity around their career path options. And we know those top 2 reasons employees leave their employer. So if we can address that, it's a win. We've seen the importance of microlearning, and I want to just emphasize that there's a direct correlation between the application of microlearning and increased engagement and retention, as Roberta showed in her slides. On demand, just in time, shorter, faster, better. And we've seen a lower end user usage with long courses that may require nights and weekends, and that's not motivating. It's not the way users prefer to learn. Start with a pilot. Build on that success, creating internal advocates and inspiring others to do the same. Nothing succeeds like success, and a successful pilot will help build momentum to expand the effort. Critical. Measure results that matter, not just training results, hours completed, those sorts of operational metrics, but really, how has this impacted or will impact the business? Businesses want to know, how did our training investment help retain employees? Or did it accelerate, for example, employees transition from a product-centric culture to a customer-centric one? And finally, we believe in celebrating success. A learning culture, like Maria described, recognizes people that achieve results. However one does it, put a spotlight on it and celebrate that success. And then I'd like to just, on behalf of EBSCOlearning, mention that we're pleased to offer qualified participants in today's webinar free access to Excel, microlearning content that's really second to none in terms of quality and ease of use. To learn more, you can contact us by email, phone, or the QR code that's on the slide. We'd be happy to show you curated content across videos, business book summaries, articles, microcourses, and a learning pass that produce a really great user experience. Set up a call with us at your convenience, and I guarantee it'll accelerate your success. Thank you.
Roberta, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry, everyone. I haven't left a lot of time for Q&A. That's on me pacing the webinar. But if you do have any questions, please pop them in chat, and Rob and the team or myself, we could get back to you with answers to those questions via email. And just as we close this out, I have one question for Maria, Mike, and Rob. What's the one key takeaway each of you would like to share with our audience? One thing.
Learning.
Oh, Maria.
Did you hear me? Did that come through?
No, you're on mute, I think.
Oh.
Keep learning.
Alignment.
Michael. Alignment. Is that Rob?
Rob says alignment. Oh, I only have one word. I can't do that in one word, but
Two is
I'll use this opportunity to make a quick point that that I didn't get a chance to make, which is peer-to-peer learning really is a force multiplier when it comes to learning, and even in a micro-learning solution, we have ways to really implement that and make it happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Been a great session. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. And I think Ivy's got a slide here and a prize.
Yes, thank you, Roberta. Congratulations to our 2 raffle winners. The first one winning 50% off the 2025 HCM Excellence Conference is Rich Barton. Congratulations. The second one winning a free submission to our Excellence in Action program is Christine Holloway. Congratulations to both of you. We will be reaching out shortly with more details.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.